241. The Ant and the Scarab Beetle. All summer an ant roamed the countryside, gathering up grains of wheat and barley and storing them up for winter. Seeing this, a scarab beetle expressed surprise that she was working so hard at the time of year when most other animals rested from their labors and had a holiday. At the time the ant didn't reply, but when winter had come and rain soaked the dung, the scarab beetle was hungry. She asked the ant to lend her a bit of food. Then the ant replied, "Oh, beetle, if you had worked when I took the trouble to, instead of mocking me, you would have plenty of food now too." Similarly, in times of abundance we should plan ahead lest we suffer distress when times change. 242. The Ant and the Pigeon. A thirsty ant went down to a spring to drink, but was caught by the flow of water coming from it and was about to be swept away. Seeing this, a pigeon broke a twig from a nearby tree and threw it into the water. The ant clambered onto it and was saved. While this was going on, a fowler came along with his lime twigs ready to catch the pigeon. The ant saw what was happening and bit the man's foot so that the pain made him suddenly throw down the twigs and the pigeon flew off. This fable shows that one good turn deserves another. 243. The Field Mouse and the Town Mouse. A field mouse had a town mouse for a friend. The field mouse invited the town mouse to dinner in the country. When he saw that there was only barley and corn to eat, the town mouse said, "Do you know, my friend, that you live like an ant? I, on the other hand, have an abundance of good things. Come home with me, and I will share it all with you." So they set off together. The house mouse showed his friend some beans and bread flour, together with some dates, a cheese, honey, and fruit. And the field mouse was filled with wonder and blessed him with all his heart, cursing his own lot. Just as they were preparing to start their meal, a man suddenly opened the door. Alarmed by the noise, the mice rushed fearfully into the crevices. Then, as they crept out again to taste some dried figs, someone else came into the room and started looking for something. So they again rushed down the holes to hide. Then the field mouse, forgetting his hunger, sighed and said to his friend, "Farewell, my friend. You can eat your fill and be glad of heart, but at the price of 1,000 fears and dangers. I, poor little thing, will go on living by nibbling barley and corn without fear or suspicion of anyone." This fable shows that one should live simply and free from passion instead of luxuriously in fear and dread. 244. The Mouse and the Frog. A land mouse struck up an ill-fated friendship with a frog. One day the frog, who had evil intentions, tied the paw of the mouse to his own foot. At first they leapt over the ground to eat some corn. Then they approached the edge of the pond. Then the frog dragged the mouse to the bottom, while playing about in the water, making his croaking noises. And the unfortunate mouse, bloated with the water, was drowned. But his body floated to the surface, attached to the foot of the frog. A kite spotted it, swooped down and seized it with his talons, and the frog, tied to the mouse, soon followed, and served also to provide a dinner for the kite. Even death can avenge itself, for divine justice observes everything and restores the equal proportions of her balance beam. 245. The Castaway and the Sea. A castaway, flung onto the shore, slept from exhaustion, but it wasn't long before he woke, and, seeing the sea, reproached her for seducing men with her tranquil air. For then, when she had them in her watery grip, she became wild and caused them to perish. The sea, having taken the form of a woman, said to him, "But my friend, it's not up to me. You should instead reproach the winds, for I am naturally as you see me now. It's the winds who, falling on me without a moment's warning, swell me and make me wild." Similarly, we ought not to be blamed for being the originators of an injustice when it has been carried out on the orders of others, but rather blame should fall on those who have authority over us. 246. The Young Men and the Butcher. Two young men were buying meat from the same meat stall. While the butcher's back was turned, one of the youths grabbed some cheap bits of ears, trotters, and so forth, and thrust them into the loose pocket fold of the garment of the other. When the butcher turned round, he looked for the morsels and accused the youths. But the one who had taken them saw he hadn't got them, and the one who had them swore he hadn't taken them. Seeing through their false statements, the butcher said, "You can get away with a false oath to me, but you certainly won't escape the notice of the gods." This fable shows that, however persuasive the sophistries by which they are made, false oaths are still impious. 247. The Fawn and the Stag. One day a fawn said to the stag, "Father, you are so much bigger and faster than the dogs, and you have such splendid antlers to defend yourself. So why do you always run away from them?" The stag replied with a laugh, "It's true, my child, what you say. But one thing is certain. Whenever I hear the hounds baying, I make a dash for it, even though I don't know where I am fleeing." This fable shows that no amount of exhortation can reassure the faint-hearted. 248. The Young Wastrel and the Swallow. Having squandered his inheritance, a young wastrel possessed only his cloak. He noticed a swallow who had arrived early, so, thinking that summer had come, he took off his cloak and sold that too. But wintry weather was still to come. It grew very cold. He was out walking one day when he came across a swallow, frozen to death. He said, "Miserable wretch, you've ruined us both at once." This fable shows that it is always dangerous to do things at the wrong moment. 249. The Sick Man and the Doctor. A sick man, questioned about his health by the doctor, replied that he was sweating heavily. "That is good," said the doctor. Then he asked him the next time how he was feeling, and the patient said he had been shivering so much he was badly shaken up. "That's also good," said the doctor. Then he called on the man a third time and asked him how he was. He replied that he had had diarrhea. "That's good too," said the doctor, and went on his way. Then one of the sick man's parents came to visit him and asked him how he was. "I'm dying of good symptoms," he replied. So it is sometimes. Judging things by appearances, our neighbors assume we are happy with the things which are, in fact, causing us the most grief. 250. The Bat, the Bramble, and the Gull. The bat, the bramble, and the gull met up with the intention of doing a bit of trading together. The bat went out and borrowed some money to fund the enterprise. The bramble contributed a lot of cloth to be sold, and the gull brought a large supply of copper to sell. Then they set sail to go trading, but a violent storm arose which capsized their ship, and all the cargo was lost. They were able to save nothing but themselves from the shipwreck. Ever since that time, the gull has searched the seashore to see if any of his copper might be washed up somewhere. The bat, fearing his creditors, dare not go out by day and only feeds at night. And the bramble clutches the clothes of all who pass by, hoping to recognize a familiar piece of material. This fable shows that we always return to those things in which we have a stake. 251. The Bat and the House Ferrets. A bat fell to the ground and was caught by a house ferret. Realizing that she was on the point of being killed, she begged for her life. The house ferret said to her that she couldn't let her go, for ferrets were supposed to be natural enemies to all birds. The bat replied that she herself was not a bird, but a mouse. She managed to extricate herself from her danger by this means. Eventually, falling a second time, the bat was caught by another house ferret. Again she pleaded to the ferret not to eat her. The second ferret declared that she absolutely detested all mice, but the bat positively affirmed that she was not a mouse but a bat, and so she was released again. And that was how she saved herself from death twice by a mere change of name. This fable shows that it is not always necessary to confine ourselves to the same tactics, but on the contrary, if we are adaptable to circumstances, we can better escape danger. 252. The logs and the olive. Once the logs were consulting among themselves to elect a king. They asked the olive, "Reign over us." The olive tree replied, "What? Give up my oily liquor, which is so highly prized by God and man, to go and reign over the logs?" And so the logs asked the fig, "Come and reign over us." But the fig replied similarly, "What? Relinquish the sweetness of my delicious fruit to go and reign over the logs?" So the logs urged the thorn bush, "Come and reign over us." And the thorn replied, "If you were really to anoint me king over you, you would have to take shelter beneath me, otherwise the flames from my brushwood would escape and devour the cedars of Lebanon." 253. The Woodcutter and Hermes. A woodcutter who was chopping wood on the banks of a river had lost his axe. Not knowing what to do, he sat himself down on the bank and wept. The god Hermes, learning the cause of his distress, took pity on him. Hermes plunged into the river, brought out a golden axe, and asked the woodcutter if this were the one which he had lost. The man said no, that wasn't the one. So Hermes dived back in again, and this time he produced a silver axe. But the woodcutter said no, that wasn't his axe either. Hermes plunged in a third time and brought him his own axe. The man said yes, indeed, this was the very axe which he had lost. Then Hermes, charmed by his honesty, gave him all three. Returning to his friends, the woodcutter told them about his adventure. One of them took it into his head to get himself some axes as well, so he set off for the river bank, threw his axe into the current deliberately, and then sat down in tears. Then Hermes appeared to him also, and, learning the cause of his tears, he dived in and brought him to a golden axe, asking if it were the one which he had lost. The man, all joyful, cried out, "Yes, it is indeed the one." But the god, horrified at such effrontery, not only withheld the golden axe, but didn't return the man's own. This fable shows that the gods favor honest people, but are hostile to the dishonest. 254. The Travelers and the Bear. Two friends were traveling along the same path together when a bear suddenly appeared. One of them quickly climbed up a tree and hid himself there. The other, who was about to be caught, threw himself down on the ground and feigned death. The bear sniffed him all over with his muzzle, but the man held his breath, for it is said that a bear will not touch a corpse. When the bear had gone away, the man hiding in the tree came down and asked his friend what the bear had whispered in his ear. The other replied, "Not to travel in future with friends who slip away when there is danger." This fable shows that when danger threatens, true friends will face it. 255. The Travelers and the Raven. Some people, traveling on business, came across a one-eyed raven. They turned to look at it, and one of them advised that they retrace their steps, it being a bad omen in his opinion. But another of the men spoke up. "How can this bird predict the future for us when he couldn't even predict his own and avoid the loss of his eye?" Likewise, people who are blinded by their own interests are poorly qualified to give counsel to their neighbors. 256. The Travelers and the Axe. Two men were traveling together. One of them found an axe along the way, and he said to his companion, "We found an axe." "Don't say we have found, say you have found," said the other man. Soon afterwards they were joined by the men who had lost the axe, and the one who had it, seeing that they were about to chase him, said, "We are lost." "Don't say we are lost," replied his companion, "but I am lost. For since you found the axe, you haven't granted me half of your lucky find." This fable shows that if you are not willing to share good luck with a friend, you should not expect him to stand by you in misfortune. 257. The Travelers and the Plane Tree. One summer, in the heat of the midday sun, two weary travellers stretched out under the shady branches of a plane tree to rest. Looking up into the tree, they agreed, "Here is a tree that is sterile and useless to man." The plane tree answered, "Ungrateful wretches! At the very same time that you are enjoying my benefits, you accuse me of being sterile and useless." Some people are like this. Some are so unlucky that even though they are good to their neighbors, they can't make them believe in their benevolence. 258. The Travelers and the Brushwood. Trudging along a cliff path, some travelers came to a high point. In the distance, they could see some brushwood floating on the sea. They mistook it for a warship and therefore waited, thinking it would land. Then the brushwood, pushed by the wind, came nearer, and they no longer thought it was a warship but a cargo ship. Later on, when they got to the beach, they realized that it was only a clump of brushwood, and they agreed, "What fools we were to wait for something that was nothing." This fable shows that some people who appear formidable because they are strangers reveal at the first test that they are non-entities. 259. The Traveller and Truth. Travelling through a desert, a man came upon a solitary woman who kept her eyes lowered. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Truth," she replied. "And why have you left the town and come to live in a desert?" She replied, "Because in days gone by, lies were only known to a few men, but now they are everywhere, with everyone you speak to." Life will be evil and painful for men while lies prevail over truth. 260. The Traveller and Hermes. A traveller who had a long journey to make made a vow to the god Hermes that, if he should arrive safely, he would consecrate to the god half of anything he found along the way. As it happened, he found on the journey a carrying pouch which contained some almonds and some dates. When he saw this, he picked it up, imagining it to be full of money. He shook out the contents and ate them. Then he took the shells of the almonds and the stones of the dates and placed them on an altar, saying, "O Hermes, I have kept my vow, for I have shared with you the outside and the inside of that which I have found." This fable applies to the miser who, through greed, uses trickery even with the gods.